Right then, I don't think this is the signing anybody really expected, did they? Or did we? For quite some time, we've been hearing about AI recruitment at West Ham United. Amazon Web Services, an AI company, Crayon, were commissioned to create a high spec AI assisted scouting system for us. Then Niels Koppen arrived, data led scouting, looking to uncover a young gem before everybody else spotted him. That was the way we were going, weren't we? So naturally, most of us were expecting our first summer signing and probably several summer signings to be some exciting 21-year-old from Belgium or the Netherlands or Scandinavia that none of us have ever heard of. Instead, West Ham looks set to sign a 34-year-old free agent. Joel Veltman is reportedly undergoing a medical, if he's not already finished it, before joining West Ham, having left Brighton when his contract expired in the summer. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. If we were still a Premier League football club, I'd be scratching my head and definitely asking what on earth is going on. But we're not. We're in the Championship. Promotion is the only objective. And perhaps, well, not perhaps, most definitely, it changes the landscape completely when it comes to the players we need to bring in to this football club for this season ahead. So today I want to kind of take a closer look at Joel Veltman. As I've said, past 6 seasons, I've been a Brighton player until his contract ran out, but he could actually be one of the most decorated footballers that we could sign this summer. He came through the Ajax academy system. He broke into that first team squad, which wasn't easy, but he stayed in that team for a decade, which was even harder to do at a club like that. He made well over 200 appearances for Ajax. He won multiple Dutch titles, domestic cups. He played in the Champions League. And perhaps most impressively, he was part of Erik ten Hag's Ajax side that reached the semi-final of the Champions League in 2019. That team then knocked out, by that time, they knocked out Real Madrid and Juventus, but came within seconds of the Champions League, getting to the Champions League final before Spurs beat them. Now, Veltman wasn't the superstar of that team, but he was a trusted and solid defender. And that's probably the best way to describe his entire career. He's reliable, he's dependable, he's professional, and he's the kind of player that every manager seems to relish having in their squad. In 2020, Brighton paid £900,000 for him. And to be quite honest with you, that looked like quite a bargain. And over 6 seasons, he became one of Brighton's most consistent defenders. And he worked under 3 different managers: Potter, De Zerbi, Hertzler, all with different philosophies. And yet, every single one of those managers always found room for Joel Veltman in their team. And that kind of tells you something about the player himself. He's not just a player that can work only in one system. You see players, they arrive, they've been working in another system and they try and fit them in and they just don't seem to fit. Veltman adapted to all the different systems that were put in front of him. So, what kind of player is West Ham potentially going to get? Well, he's 34 years of age. I'll come to that in a moment. He's a naturally right side. He's a right back. Probably best, but he's probably best described as a defender who can work comfortably across the whole back line. So certainly a right back. But if we need a right-sided centre back in either a back three or in a back four, he could do that job pretty well as well. Now, his game is not flashy, no pace. He isn't going to go and beat 3 players and whip crosses into the box like we're hoping Malik to do on the left-hand side. It's never been his game. His game is based around intelligence and positioning. You won't notice Veltman because he rarely does put a foot wrong. He rarely puts himself in trouble. And that's one thing Brighton supporters have always praised him about. They've praised him about his footballing intelligence. His reading of the game is really, really good. It's pretty excellent. And that's exactly what happens when you have experienced defenders. Technically also, he's excellent at that as well. He's got a good technique for a defender. And for a West Ham side that's going to hope to dominate possession against plenty of championship teams, his calmness and his technical skills become incredibly valuable. Now, although he's 34 years of age, he still has an awful lot to offer. Let's talk about where he might fit under a Nuno system. Aaron Wan-Bissaka looks almost certain to leave. Otherwise, why are we making the first summer signing a right back? So it looks pretty obvious that Wan-Bissaka is on his way out. So that means a right back situation, that we have at the moment is only Carl Walker-Peters. He'll be the first choice, but behind him, there's not an awful lot of experience, if any. We've got some good youngsters, but we need some experience there in defence. And that's why we're going for Veltman. Now, I doubt very much he's going to be expecting to play 46 league games, but he arrives as a bit of an insurance. If Walker-Peters picks up an injury or a suspension, then a player like Veltman can easily step in. If there's an injury even to a centre-back, Veltman would be able to fill that role as well. But the one really important thing that Veltman is going to bring is leadership. We've lost an awful lot of that over the past couple of years. Players with a voice in the dressing room. Apparently, you've got to blame Potter for that, because Potter got rid of all the voices when at the beginning of last season, because he couldn't handle those personalities, and we suffered for it because everybody then started to look at Bowen, looking up to him. But Bowen is not kind of that vocal captain. Some captains are like that; they're quieter. And Bowen is one of those captains, but he had no one really. We didn't have any leaders. And Veltman will bring exactly that. He will bring leadership and he'll bring his experience. Now, obviously, he does have his weaknesses. And the obvious one is his age. We can't deny it. At 34 years of age, if he's left isolated against rapid wingers, he's going to struggle. That's just the reality of it. So his game is not about pace. It's more about positioning. So I doubt, like I said, we're going to see him bobbing up and down the wing, trying to put crosses in. But where Nuno might need a player if Nuno needs to play, say, a wing back formation, i.e., with a back three, then Veltman is the kind of player that can slot easily in a back three defensive system in order to accommodate a wing back setup. Now, his injury record. This is the one thing that we all worry about, especially when we go for an older player. The first thing you're going to be thinking of, what's his injury record like? And thankfully, this is one of his biggest positives. Overall, he's been remarkably reliable throughout his whole career. Now, look, like most players in their 30s, he's going to have the odd muscle injury, calf issues, minor knocks. And he also suffered the most significant injury he had was an ACL in his Ajax playing career, which kept him out for several months. But thankfully, that doesn't seem to have affected him. During his Brighton years, he was generally available for more often than not. He wasn't one of those players who spent months on the treatment table every season. There were occasional absences, like most players, hamstring, calf injury, ankle problems, etc. But they tended to be short-term injuries rather than long-term. At 34, Nuno's almost certainly going to manage his minutes carefully. You probably won't see him playing every Saturday, Tuesday, etc. Heavy schedule in the Championship, but a player like Veltman is not going to be expected to be playing on a regular basis. But there's little in his recent injury history to suggest that he's going to become a long-term absentee. Fingers crossed that doesn't change. So this signing, however, does kind of raise a different question about West Ham. What exactly is our recruitment strategy? Are we that skint that we're only going to go for players, freebies, and probably loan signings? Now, I've mentioned this new scouting system that we're meant to have, plus the arrival of Niels Koppen. The expectation amongst fans is that we'd be identifying, undervalued players in their early 20s who've got, we take them on, who've got potential resale value. And also looking at players that coming in sort of like their mid-20s, 25, 26, 27, who aren't getting game time at their respective clubs. That's kind of what we were expecting to get. But Veltman doesn't fit that profile. No resale value. He's certainly not coming out of any AI scouting project. Now, look, a couple of weeks back, I did suggest that we would need to sign a mix of young talent and some experienced players. And Veltman, as a seasoned defender, makes a lot of sense, despite what a lot of fans are going to be thinking. West Ham's immediate objective is obvious. We've got to get promoted. And a player with Veltman's experience can contribute towards achieving that. Financially, it makes sense as well. No transfer fee. This allows West Ham, hopefully, to allocate whatever money we've got of our budget, towards players that positions we still need. We need a striker. We need a creative attacking midfielder. We need another centre back, and we need a pacey winger. Let me mention the centre back for a moment, because everyone is suggesting now, with Veltman's versatility, that's the end of our chase for Disasi or another centre back. And I don't think that's the case. I think Veltman is in addition to us continuing to chase for Disasi. Now, apparently he was going to go to Crystal Palace. I think they've signed Tomiyasu from, what was he, Arsenal? And there's now a suggestion. Now, Tomiyasu's a right back, but I'm being told, he's the sort of player that can play regularly as a centre back. So that might scupper Crystal Palace's approach for Disasi. So I still think there's a chance there. I don't like the fact that Disasi still wants another week or so to think about things. But anyway, I don't think it'll be the end of us looking for another centre back. I think Veltman would be in addition to. Now, even if Veltman's wages are respectable, which I assume they will be, overall, the cost of this deal is going to be modest compared to having to go and pay, 10, 15 million pound for a right back. You might not actually do a better job. The smart squad building is, if the resources are saved and reinvested wisely elsewhere, makes a lot of sense. Why not get a seasoned professional who's available, and so we can spend our money in other parts of the squad? So, is Joel Veltman an exciting signing? Well, no. I expect fans to be really, I don't know, aggrieved about this signing. I'm not expecting a lot of fans to be happy with it, but we need players who are solid backups, and Veltman certainly is a solid backup. We need a signing to provide cover for Kyle Walker-Peters, and the fact that he's versatile and can play in a back line is also really, really important. And bringing leadership to the dressing room is going to help the attitude for a promotion push. The only question now is whether this is the first piece of a much bigger recruitment puzzle. I bloody hope so. I hope that this is the start now of bringing in at least 5 players. I want a minimum of 5 players. But it's the strategy. What's West Ham's transfer strategy? What's going to happen now? Is it all going to be aged players, free signings? I hope not. I really do. I hope not. And I would expect now West Ham to go out and get the players like Engels in in central attacking midfield, to go out and get Manus Solomon as the winger, and then to bring in a player, a striker. There's talk of Bamba Dieng as a signing, as a striker. Now, he's a freebie, but he's a much younger freebie. Now, before anybody gets really upset about Veltman, I would just remind you of this. Forget the fact that he's 34. He's bringing a lot of experience to the table, but remind you of how a lot of West Ham fans felt when we signed Craig Dawson. All right, he was a bit younger, but still, the principle's the same. I remember when Craig Dawson signed, everybody was suggesting how awful a signing he was going to be. And look how that turned out. Let's hope Veltman gets even close, anywhere near close to what Craig Dawson delivered for West Ham. Because if he does, I think it'll be a signing well worth having. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I will be back again when there's more news. I'll see you all again pretty soon.